Fantasy football playoffs are just around the corner, and right now is a great time to be buying and selling assets in Dynasty leagues. And today we're going to talk about three players that are impending NFL free agents that I think are worth buying right now ahead of the fantasy football playoffs. So some of these players that we're going to talk about are good for contenders. They're also good for rebuilders. But for the most part, they're all young enough to be a blend of both. The first guy we're going to talk about today is going to be John Mechie of the New York Jets. John Mechie finds himself in an interesting situation, right? John Mechie is a player that, was drafted as a top 50 pick to the Houston Texans. Unfortunately, he gets leukemia, misses his entire rookie season. But this was a top 50 pick. He's only 25 years old. He was traded to the New York Jets after being traded to the Philadelphia Eagles this season. So he's been on 3 teams so far this year. But it looks like he's finally starting to hit his stride because he's being given the opportunities. When he was on the Houston Texans, right, there was a lot of situations that kind of blocked him from getting on the field. But when their injuries arise, he was able to make hay with his chances that he got, right? Then they drafted a bunch of young players and brought in Christian Kirk this year, and John Mechie became kind of an afterthought on that roster. He gets traded to the Philadelphia Eagles in season, and we know the Philadelphia Eagles, they don't really use a third wide receiver, and if it's anybody, it's Dallas Goedert, right? Devonta Smith, A.J. Brown, they made no sense trading for John Mechie. So they move John Mechie to the New York Jets. And in the last 2 of 3 games, or at least the only 3 games he's played with the Jets, in 2 of them, the last 2 weeks, he has had back-to-back weeks where he has had a snap share of 80%. And when you talk about John Mechie, he was a great wide receiver at Alabama, a 26.9% target share, a 22.6 college dominator rating. And I know, right? It's like this guy was drafted a few years ago. And we're really going to sit here and talk about his college production, but it's important, right? There was a lot, context is key. There was a lot of things that got in the way of him performing on the field, and it wasn't based off of talent. It was just unforeseen circumstances that happened to John Mechie. Now, he goes back-to-back weeks with the New York Jets with a touchdown, including last week against the Ravens. He had a 7-target, 6-reception, 65-yard game where he was covered by a good corner in Nate Wiggins. And the important thing to note here is he could return with the Jets either way. I think it's a good landing spot for him. I think the team believes in him. If he stays with the Jets and re-signs, because he is a restricted free agent, they don't really have a strong number 2 outside of maybe Mason Taylor, right? So if they can fix the quarterback situation there, I get it. It sounds and feels like a high risk because the quarterback situation feels so dire there, but we know something's going to change. And I think he's worth taking a chance on, given the fact that right now the market has him as the wide receiver 99. This is a cheap player to buy right now. Now, one thing to note about him before we move on to the next player is he's a restricted free agent. The Jets can keep him in 2026 because they've placed or because they could place him as a right of first refusal or a tender, right? So that could be, the original round, second round, first round, it depends, but it gives the Jets negotiation leverage to keep him. But we'll see, right? I think either way, it could be a good dart throw to make on John Mechie. If you're going to make a trade for him, I think a 3rd-round pick is pretty fair, right? Especially if you have the assets to move. Maybe you move an aging veteran who, is performing well right now to a contender. I think he could be a player that you can also possibly use if you're a player that's playing in a league that makes you start 3 wide receivers. Like Mechie has been flex worthy the last 2 weeks. And so it's something to consider. But I like John Mechie. I love the talent. I like seeing him get the opportunity, and he's making the most of it. And he's still only 25 years old. Next player we're going to talk about here is another player out of New York, but it's for the New York Giants, and it's Wan'Dale Robinson. This guy is wide receiver 11 on the year, right? And he's having a career year, 13.6 PPR points per game. This guy is only 24 years old. He turns 25 next year. He's also a free agent, but he's not restricted. He could go anywhere, right? And think about Wan'Dale Robinson. He was a top 50 pick. You're going to notice top 50 pick, both guys that we just talked about. They were talented players coming into the NFL, right? They just fell into pretty bad situations, but they have kind of started to make the most of it. Wan'Dale Robinson, especially putting together two back-to-back strong years. But when you look at Wan'Dale Robinson's production in college, 27.3% college target share, a 37.3% college dominator rating, a 4.44 40-yard dash. This guy is a good athlete. And he was 18 when he had his breakout age, 18 years old, right? So he performed well early on in college, which is very important to see. And we've seen him at a young age. He's still only 24. He is performing the best in his entire career, right? He's got 102 targets this year. He's on pace to beat his 140 targets last year. And the funny thing is, and I talked about this in the offseason, I thought he was one of the cheapest values you could get in redraft this year, right? Everyone thought PPR merchant, volume merchant, 140 targets last year. The average depth of target wasn't enough and it could never go up, right? And I never understood that. This guy was a good athlete. He can make plays happen. He just wasn't, he was getting a lot of volume last year, but he wasn't able to create like we're seeing this year. And we knew he was a good athlete. We knew he could have that potential. It was really about the offense around him and, can that depth of target get higher, right? We're seeing his depth of reception much, much higher this year. 12 yards per reception in 2025 versus 7.5 yards per reception last year. That shows tremendous growth. I am aggressively buying Wan'Dale Robinson as a contender and as a rebuilder. I think he fits, again, both sides of the coin here. He's wide receiver 38 right now per the market, and he's behind guys like Troy Franklin and Quentin Johnston. I don't know about you guys, but I would prefer Wan'Dale Robinson over both of those players, right? I've seen enough of Troy Franklin. Troy Franklin, yes, he is a favorite of Bo Nix right now, but Pat Bryant is also a guy that team has future plans for. And Troy Franklin, a little bit to know, he's not a guy that's going to play much special teams. And with Cortland Sutton on a new contract, with Pat Bryant coming in, with Marvin Mims, if this team adds even more talent, which is very possible, right? They were looking to add in free agency this year. Troy Franklin finds himself in a weird spot where he doesn't play special teams. You don't really know what do you do with him. He could slot in potentially as the wide receiver 4 on the team because I think Sean Payton has bigger plans for Pat Bryant and Cortland Sutton, and they possibly bring somebody else in. Now, looking at Quentin Johnston, right? He had an awesome start to the season, and a lot of people sold high. And right now, he's having a down stretch, right? Now, the talent is there, but they also drafted Trey Harris. They also have Lambert as well, right? And they also have Lab McConkey and now Rondé Gadsden. It's a crowded team and a lot of young talent that's not going anywhere. I would trade Wan'Dale Robinson for one of those guys straight up if I could. And if you could even get a little bit added on top, I would, right? Because people think Wan'Dale Robinson, New York Giants, while he's having a good year this year, they also might think, man, I don't really want this guy in the Giants offense. And that's a situation where you can take advantage of. I think he's going to be a highly sought after free agent after this season. The Giants could keep him, right? But they also might not. And either way, this guy is showing us the talent that someone's going to pay up for this guy. I'd be willing to send a second rounder, maybe get something kicked back as well. Maybe get Wan'Dale and a third kicked back for a second. I would definitely consider that, but I would definitely make those swaps if you have Troy Franklin and Quentin Johnston. And as I said before, he's having an awesome season. The last guy we're going to talk about today is going to be Alec Pierce of the Indianapolis Colts. And Alec Pierce is another free agent, just 25 years old. And he was a 53rd pick, so he wasn't top 50. He just misses that top 50 threshold. All three of these guys, though, were high second round capital players, right? And all of them are making the most out of their situations this year. We saw flashes from Alec Pierce last year. We're seeing him string it together more and more this year. Alec Pierce, wide receiver 40 right now per the market, and he's been involved in 1,245 trades in the last full month. He's been the 40th most traded player right now in Dynasty. Again, 53rd overall pick not too long ago for the Indianapolis Colts. This guy can be on the field in 2 wide receiver sets, 1 wide receiver sets, 3 wide receiver sets. That's the issue with Josh Downs and some of these smaller guys where we've seen the Colts like to run heavier personnel. And Alec Pierce is going to see himself and his snap share pretty much where it is and maybe even higher in the future. When you look at Alec Pierce, he's got 124.6 explosive rating per player profiler, which ranks 6th in the NFL, 2.16 yards per route run, 10.7 PPR points per game, which lands him as the wide receiver 38. But if you believe in the talent and you think he can get better, then I think he's worth buying. He's a guy that's 6'3", that ran a 4.41 40-yard dash. He's very similar to Christian Watson, except right now he plays for the Colts in a dome. And he could stay with the Colts, and that wouldn't be the worst thing in the world, right? Daniel Jones is going to get locked up there long term, probably a 3-year deal. They traded their first-round pick to get Sauce Gardner. They are not going to draft another quarterback after this season. So Daniel Jones likes him. Shane Steichen has earned himself at least another year or two, right? The coaching staff likes Alec Pierce. So if Alec Pierce stays, it's still a good thing. And he becomes a free agent this year as well. But he's also, like Wan'Dale Robinson, going to be a highly sought after free agent, right? 15 to 18 million per year is what I'm expecting for Alec Pierce in free agency. And at this point, Michael Pittman turns 29 next year, and he's going to be in a contract year. Alec Pierce, still 25 years old. He could be a player that he could right now be the wide receiver 1. You know, you could also make the case, obviously, Tyler Warren is the true wide receiver 1 there. I get that. But when we're actually talking specifically the wide receiver position, Alec Pierce could, in fact, be that wide receiver 1 right now, even with Pittman still there. And Pittman has produced very well, but he's aging, right? And ultimately, they're going to have to pay Pierce if they want to keep him. And it's going to be a decent amount of money. If you have players like Hunter Henry, right, and you are not a contender, I would be comfortable sending Hunter Henry and getting Alec Pearson maybe a pick back, right? Because Hunter Henry has been a top 5 tight end this year, right? But he's getting older, right? I would also consider maybe doing a Stephon Diggs for Pearson, maybe a second, right? Diggs has been really good this year too. Maybe people believe that he has a couple more years and, you know, he signed a contract. He's detached Drake May. You could get Alec Pearson a 2nd-round pick possibly. I've seen on Dynasty Daddy some similar trades like this. So these are some guys that I would be looking to take advantage of right now that I think are still cheap enough that could be getting themselves big contracts next year in free agency. That's going to do it for me, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Enjoy your holiday. Enjoy the fantasy playoffs, and I'll see you guys next time.
From the Podfather to you, I deeply appreciate you tuning in. And many ask, what can I do? What can I do to help support the hosts, the research they do, the production costs? Go to PlayerProfiler.com, Dynasty Deluxe, World Famous Draft Kit, Rankings, DFS Dominator, and of course, Data Analysis. Subscribe to any one of those, and you support all of us and take Player Profiler to the moon.